Hello there guys, RMP792 here. Sorry if the lighting's a bit weird in this one. I'm having to record this quite early in the morning, so I don't really have any natural light to play with. I said yesterday that I would talk today about the first two episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. I would have talked about episode 1 last week, but as I mentioned yesterday, I was quite ill. It was somewhat less than pretty. But anyway. So, first two episodes, I'll do what I usually do and sort of talk about the events in roughly chronological order and then sort of go back and give thoughts and all that stuff. So Season 2 kind of kicks off right where Season 1 ended, with the Enterprise just sort of turning up after they receive a distress call from it. And I really liked seeing the outside of the Enterprise. Would have been nice to see the inside, but, you know, And, it's basically immediately revealed that something has happened and the Enterprise has been quite badly damaged, and they're incredibly vague as to what the hell happened to the Enterprise. All we know is it's been damaged, and it's going to have to go back to space dock for some fairly major repairs. And so in the short term, Captain Pike is taking over command of the Discovery. And he turns up in, the new bright yellow uniform, and everybody kind of takes the piss a little bit. But hey, it's actually nice seeing. Again, one of the things I quite liked about the J.J. Abrams verse reboot was they did actually pretty good updates to the classic series uniforms. You could tell what they were meant to be, and for the most part, they actually looked pretty decent. And I'm glad Discovery's kind of continued that trend with regards to Pike turning up and having the old school TOS era uniform. Again, that to me is how you update stuff visually without fundamentally changing it. Dreadfully sorry. Still not quite over this cold. There we go. So Pike turns up with a science officer and I'm assuming a tactical officer, given that she's in red. I can't remember if it's explicitly stated what job she had. And she isn't in episode 2, so I don't know if she's going to toddled off somewhere or if she's actually going to be hanging around, so we'll see. But, he basically immediately says, we need to go and do this thing because we've detected 7 red bursts, whatever the hell that means. Again, the episode wants to be very, very fast to establish their new mission, and as such, it kind of doesn't bother establishing what, we know there's been these mysterious red pulses of light, which I have to assume are traveling at FTL speeds, in order for them to detect them from multiple different places simultaneously. Unless they all went off near enough, relatively positioned, so that travelling at the speed of light, they all hit Earth at the exact same time, which is theoretically possible. The maths behind it isn't even complicated, but arranging them to go off so that everything arrives simultaneously at a specific point is, well, it's a heck of a feat. But I think the implication is more that, they're travelling at FTL speeds somehow. Admittedly, that it would not be the first time that this show has forgotten that light speed limitation applies to light, because way back in the first episode we had the Klingons activating the beacon, and they were talking about it in terms of it giving off X lumens, and and somehow everybody across the galaxy was seeing it at the same time, and that's not how light works, guys. So yes, but anywho. So, they run off to investigate, and they find, what was it? A mining colony or something like that, or some weird asteroid? And, of course, they have to go and go get it using an action sequence where they're flying sort of weird spinny pod things. Cool sequence, and again, it's nice to see Starfleet actually having other options for getting places other than just using the transporter. However, it feels kind of weird that the smug, arrogant scientist got smushed there and then nobody cared for the entire rest of the episode. I mean, I was assuming if anybody was going to get killed there, it was going to be, the female officer, because, again, she was wearing a red shirt, guys. So they clearly did that specifically to subvert expectations. But yeah, so she seemed fine, though again we didn't see her at all in episode 2. So, and yeah, and the arrogant scientist guy got killed. And it's basically mentioned that the reason Spock didn't come over, even though at this point in the timeline he is the science officer of the Enterprise, is that he basically went off and he took leave for some reason, and it's something to do with these mysterious red bursts. So, I'll be honest, I'm still not a fan of Spock being, Michael's sister. Even, Spock being Michael's sister. Michael being Spock's adopted sister. You know what I meant. For the same reason, it's dumb for the same reason that Sybok was dumb in Star Trek V. It just feels really weird that at no point has he mentioned her before now. I mean, they're kind of getting away with it by establishing that they don't have a particularly good relationship, and there is kind of precedent in that in is it Errand of Mercy? Or is it Journey to Babel? It's Journey to Babel. In Journey to Babel, which is the first episode where Sarek actually appears, Ambassador Sarek and his wife Amanda come on board, and Kirk greets them and does all the diplomatic formal niceties and so on and so forth, and then they toddle off. And then he sort of said to Spock, while we're in orbit of Vulcan, we'll be here a day or two. Do you want to pop down and visit your parents? And Spock just sort of goes, oh no, the ambassador, and his wife are my parents. And the fact that nobody had mentioned it up to that, he had never mentioned up to that point that, oh, by the way, my dad's a famous ambassador. So it's not unheard of for Spock to be very, very reserved. It still feels kind of dumb and fanfiction-y for that to be a thing. Again, if you wanted a connection to Spock and Sarek, what I would have done is have Michael be adopted by one of Sarek's colleagues or pupils or something like that. So you can have she knew Spock when they were younger, and they attended the Vulcan schools together and things like that. And maybe they were, maybe they were friends. But the whole adopted sister thing, no, just no. Maybe you could do something fun with it, but frankly, they haven't managed up to this point, and I still think it was a bad move right from the start. But yeah, so, and then we've got the bit where where Michael gets wounded and she sees something, and this is clearly the overarching thread of the series. What the hell was it that she saw? Because it looked kind of angelic. That is really kind of hammered in episode 2. And then Pike comes running in and saves her. And then you've got that mysterious lump of asteroid that isn't transportable, which is interesting. I'm curious to see where they go with that. So they pull off some fun maneuvers in order to actually grab a piece of the asteroid. And yeah, overall, it's quite an interesting first episode to the series. And most importantly, it feels like it's got a very radical shift in tone. It's a lot faster, it's a lot more fun, and it's a lot less bogged down with, tedious relationship stuff. Because I'll freely admit, the, Ash-Michael relationship in Season 1, that got so tedious. I mean, Star Trek's never been good at doing relationship stories. The only one that they ever really completely 100% nailed was the Tom and B'Elanna story from Voyager. And that's because they took a long-ass time establishing them as, antagonistic colleagues, to friends, to clearly some feelings there, but neither of them's actually willing to talk about it, to actually dating, to married and having kids. And it took them 7 seasons to do all that, and they did a really good job of it. The Ash-Michael relationship just ate up screen time, and you knew ultimately it was going to end in tragedy because we all figured out that Ash was Vokta from the second he turned up. So that, yeah, I actually read an article where somebody was commenting that it feels weird that L'Rell and Ash haven't been mentioned at all yet, and frankly, I hope they don't come back. Their storyline is done, and it wasn't a particularly interesting storyline to begin with. The actors were fine, but I can't. I feel like their story is done. They're probably still going to turn up at some point in the future, but hopefully they can do something more interesting with them than they did in season 1. But for now, leave them. I'd rather focus on this new interesting storyline that they've got going. So yeah, and the other thing I liked, the bridge officers actually got to talk. They got to reintroduce themselves. Actually, that might be the first time they've even said their names aloud. And it was actually really nice for Pike to just be like, yes, so, who are you all? I need to know names. So that they all introduce themselves, and, their helm officer got something to do, and just, they actually felt like characters, not just, people yes sirring and no sirring and 3 bags full sirring. So that was good. That was good to see. That's kind of all I can remember from episode 1, to be honest. Pike turning up and then the thing through the asteroid field. Again, I don't really remember what the hell they were actually doing going to that asteroid, apart from trying to follow one of the mysterious bursts. Anywho, but yeah, so on to season 2, on to episode 2, and Pike is now formally invested as captain of the Discovery, which means he's swapped from his glorious yellow ridiculous uniform to one of the Discovery semi-sensible ones, and I'd have preferred he kept the old one, quite frankly. I have major TOS nostalgia, and thus I kind of adore those uniforms. Maybe give him the green number that Kirk always used to wear. But, yeah. So he's formally taken over, and they get another red burst, and this time it's from somewhere fairly deep in the Beta Quadrant. So if they want to get there, it's going to take them 150 years at maximum speed. Unless they use the Spore Drive. Guys, we did the Spore Drive thing. The effect for it is still goofy. I still think the way it spins is kind of pointless. And yeah, it felt like we had an out at the end of the last season, where it was a case of Starfleet doesn't want to use it because it requires genetically modifying navigators, and well, genetic modification is still banned in the Federation. I'm not sure if they're meant to have lifted that by the Voyager era, because in the Voyager era we certainly see some minor genetic modifications being done to Tom and B'Elanna's daughter while she's still in the womb in order to avoid some genetic illness. So it's possible that they've lifted it slightly to allow you to, to treat genetic deficiencies. Actually, yes, it might be that it's only been recently lifted at that point of the timeline, because B'Elanna mentions suffering from that illness when she was younger, and the Doctor's comment is that now the treatment is genetic modification. So yeah, so I think we can probably assume that somewhere during B'Elanna's lifetime, so somewhere in the 30 years previous to Voyager, that change occurred. So yes, okay, so at this point of the timeline, yes, genetic modification, still very illegal. The reason for that being the eugenics wars and, well, watch Enterprise if you're curious. But yeah, so yes, so that's highly illegal, and as a result, Starfleet kind of doesn't want to keep doing it. So unless they can find a method of controlling the Spore Drive that doesn't involve plugging in, effectively a pilot who has to have modifications and cybernetic tweaks and stuff. Meanwhile, Stamets is kind of doesn't want to be using the Spore Drive too much because he keeps seeing Culber, which I have a feeling they're going to try and bring Culver back in some form or other, because let's face it, they got a lot of backlash after they killed him, and killing him was pointless. It was a pure shock death, and it really did feel like a bury your gaze trope. And yeah, I was one of the people who was quite pissed off when they did that, because Stamets and Culver actually were a really adorable couple. So I can see them trying to undo that in some form or another, and we will have to see. I don't know. I feel like undoing it would be a mistake, because you've always got to be very, very careful when you, in your sci-fi show, if you make death irrelevant. You know, there are many, many shows that have reached the point where death is just not really death anymore. You know, because the main characters keep dying and coming back. You know, Supernatural's got that problem at the moment because the boys have died like half a dozen times and they just keep coming back. Death is a rotating door. To the point where they had to establish that the Grim Reaper is sufficiently pissed off with them that she's going to explicitly make sure that, you know, the next time they die, they bloody stay dead. And then they died and they didn't stay dead. So, you know, it's become a revolving door in that show, and I think Discovery needs to avoid doing the same thing. So he kind of has to stay dead, which is a pity because, again, I like them as characters and I like them as a couple. So. But yes, so Tilly is apparently, once she's faffing on with the asteroid, is meant to somehow allow them to control the spore drive without needing him. I don't know how an asteroid helps with that, but it's made up pseudoscience anyway, so okay. And yes, but they end up having to use the spore drive. And they make a jump to somewhere fairly deep in the beta quadrant. Incidentally, if you're not aware, Earth's actually pretty close to the boundary between the alpha and beta quadrant. You know, you'd think we'd be right smack in the middle, but we're actually not. You know, if you divide the galaxy like that, you know, with the alpha quadrant in this corner, we're sort of here-ish, and the beta quadrant's over here. So the beta quadrant's actually not that far, relatively speaking. But, you know, again, quadrants of the galaxy, quarters of the galaxy, they're big places. So the fact that, you know, it's 150 light years deep into, or 150 years travel time deep into it, fair enough. But that does firmly establish that the spore drive could take you pretty much anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Would have been useful to have one of those on Voyager, wouldn't it? You know, or maybe if Voyager had had the tech specs for it, they could have built one. This is the problem with the spore drive, it screws with canon. But yes, so they eventually, almost instantly get there, and they find something odd. They find humans. And the thing is, we've seen this before. You know, we've seen humans taken and displaced before. There's is it the 38ers or 39ers? In Voyager, where they go to a planet and find that, for whatever reason, this alien race kidnapped a whole bunch of humans from Earth, took them to be slave laborers, and then there was the Ubud Rebellion, and they fought back, and yada yada yada, and now they built, you know, a nice little civilization on this planet. And they've still got a bunch of people in stasis, one of whom is Amelia Earhart. Because of course she is. Then there's the Enterprise episode with the alien race who kidnapped a bunch of people from what was effectively the Old West. And again, rebellion. They're now, you know, second-class citizens. It's a whole racism metaphor. And, you know, that's a season 3 episode, actually, of Enterprise. And I maintain 90% of that was an excuse to have, an excuse to ride around on horses and then get into a Mako, Makos with laser weapons versus, you know, cowboys with 6-shooters, you know, get into a fight with each other. Goes about as well as you'd expect for the people with the projectile weapons against the guys with lasers. Sorry, phasers. I should know better. But yeah, so we've seen that before, except in this case, it doesn't appear that this alien race in question took them to be slave laborers. In fact, we have no idea why they took them, because it transpires that basically all of these people were sheltering inside a church, or their ancestors, I should say, were sheltering inside a church during the last days of the Third World War, when this alien being appeared and looked fairly damn angelic. Actually, hilariously, it reminded me a lot of Metatron from Deus Machina Demon Bane, the design, where you've got the sort of face mask thing that looks like a kind of sci-fi future helmet, but combined with the sort of, you know, angelic winged look. So yeah, that's what that reminded me of. Go watch the Demon Bane playthrough if you're curious what she looks like. It takes like 4 or 5 episodes for her to turn up. I can't remember exactly where she turns up, but yeah, so that's what the design reminded me of. And here's the thing, I'm a sucker for angel imagery, right? One of the reasons I like 40K is they have pretty much literal angels in that setting. I mean, they've literally just released the first images of the Sanguinius model, and Sanguinius, if you're not aware, is pretty much literally an angel. You know, the whole white wings coming out the back of his armor look, and yeah, I might buy myself that. Maybe. Haven't decided yet, but maybe. But yeah, so mysterious gunge in my throat. But yeah, so they're clearly going for a science versus religion vibe in this season. You know, the first season's overarching thing was supposed to be, you know, is Starfleet an exploration force or a military force? To which my attitude is, they're a military force whose primary focus is exploration. You know, there's a bit in one of the Lost Fleet books, which again I recommend you read, where they get into a discussion with one of their Marines, where their Marines' comment is that, you know, they have their search and rescue mission build and their assault build, which are identical. And the comment is, so hang on, it's the same thing with different names? No, it's two very different things with the exact same capabilities. You know, there's a difference between, you know, we are going to go in there and kick ass and take names, and we are going in there to help people, but we're bringing the guns just in case everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And Starfleet is the second one. They always go in, you know, to explore, to advance human knowledge, to, you know, act in diplomatic fashion, to help people who want help. But they have the weaponry and the training to defend themselves and defend other people if necessary. So, yeah, anytime somebody tries to claim Starfleet isn't military, that to me is just disrespecting the military by assuming that all they know how to do is shoot people. You know, their training teaches them how to shoot people. That's not necessarily their primary job. So, Starfleet is a military, but not one whose primary focus is on blowing stuff up. That's my take on it. But yes, so that's clearly what they were going for in Season 1, and they kind of failed utterly. And Season 2, they're going for the you know, religion or science question. And it's Star Trek, so frankly it could go either way. I'm deadly serious. They always come up with, you know, pseudoscientific explanations, but let's face it, the Q are basically gods. You know, they can literally do anything with a snap of their fingers. You know, we encounter a whole bunch of, you know, powerful energy beings in TOS, you know, who can manipulate matter at will and things like that, and they're basically gods. You know, and again, they break out the is it an Asimov quote? Yeah, the any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic line. And that's pretty true. I mean, let's face it, I'm talking to you through this iPad now. That's pretty damn close to magic. You know, if I took this back 500 years, hell, if I took this thing back 150 years and showed it to someone, they would not be able to understand it in any concept other than magic. You know, so that really does kind of sum up Star Trek's attitude, in that they're forever encountering, you know, godlike beings, but that doesn't necessarily make them gods, that just makes them something that cannot yet be explained. So I suspect that's the line they're going to end up falling on, but I can honestly see them doing one of the old, oh yes, many of Earth's religions were inspired by having seen these creatures in the past. You know, that old sci-fi chestnut. So, yeah, so we're definitely doing a science versus religion thing, and I'm okay with that. Again, I like when Star Trek does big questions like this. So, that's what I think we're going to be seeing, and, you know, again, the through line is almost certainly going to... So, not long after there's this mysterious red burst, they arrive at this planet, everything seems fine. So the captain, Michael, and can't remember her name, one of the bridge officers go down, and they basically state that the reason they send her down with them is that she grew up in a relatively primitive community like this. So she, you know, has experience dealing with this sort of thing and might be useful, which, Yeah, that's just establishing a little bit of backstory for your secondary cast. That's all good. So they go down and they find, this place is quite nice, though there is a mysterious signal being transmitted, which they find out is basically the original distress signal that has been deliberately kept on a loop since the Third World War. Side note, we're coming up to that in about 10 years. Yeah, I wish that was as funny as it was. I wish the comments about, oh, we're almost up to the Third World War were as funny as they once were. Actually, are we? Because we should have had the eugenics wars already, but I can't remember when the Third World War kicks off. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, so anyway. And they basically mentioned that they have a helmet cam from one of the soldiers. And yeah, it's entirely plausible that soldiers would have helmet cams. And they eventually end up trading it for a power cell because there's this one guy who's figured out exactly what's going on, and they're willing to tell him because they try and figure out if messing with these people counts as a Prime Directive violation. Honestly, I don't know. The thing is, Prime Directive says you can't mess with pre-warp civilizations. These guys do not have warp travel. But they're human, and they're originally from Earth. Welcome to Dodgy Legal Issues 101. I guarantee you that whatever the Federation equivalent to the Supreme Court is going to have an interesting time debating this one. But because their development's already been screwed over by whoever took them off Earth in the first place. And then they've kind of patchworked together a religion based on all the old religions they had with them, and so yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, my honest answer is I don't think it's a Prime Directive violation, but they're far enough away that you can't just make that decision. If they were expected to, if they were, say 10 light years from Earth, and they were going to be having Federation ships going past all the damn time, yeah, then you should probably tell them. Given that they're so far away that they're not going to have to worry about any more Federation ships for a long-ass time, I don't know. But yes, meanwhile in orbit, we've got a mysterious radiation storm or cloud of radioactive debris or something like that, which is heading towards the planet. And the timing on that feels very suspicious to me, which makes me think one of two things. That red burst was either this alien race, saying, come and help these people, or it was a test. They waited until the Discovery arrived, and then they deliberately kicked off, that asteroid strike to see what the Discovery would do and how humanity would handle it. So, my money is on the test rather than the distress call, but could go either way. And again, that they actually let the bridge crew do something, and then we've got Tilly getting whacked on the head and hallucinating, a friend of hers from childhood, and I knew immediately when that character turned up that there was something off about her, and I figured she was probably in Tilly's head. Nobody else reacted to her, and she was acting just a bit weird. And when Tilly started looking her up, I immediately went, well, she's going to be dead, isn't she? So the question is, was Tilly just hallucinating, which I doubt, or is this this mysterious angel race, getting inside her head to try and communicate with her? Who can say? The scriptwriters, as you could say. But yeah, so my money is on, I think we're dealing with another Q-like race. Someone, or possibly the Organians, or, again, another race that's evolved so far beyond us that we are unto an amoeba. And has decided, for whatever reason, that it's time for humanity to get a bit of a testing. And that's my theory as to what we're dealing with. And yeah, I've rambled for half an hour now, and I've kind of not really said anything. Sorry about But yeah, so overall, I'm liking where Discovery is going. Science versus religion is always an interesting debate in Star Trek. Um, and they seem to have stripped a lot of the fat from the show. As I say, they've ditched Laurel and Tyler, thank goodness. And generally, I'm liking the direction they're going in, and I'm hoping they continue this direction. I'm kind of not looking forward to Spock actually turning up. They've established that he's put himself in some sort of psychiatric facility as a result of bad dreams he's been having, which are clearly somehow connected to these red bursts. Spock being personally connected to it, yeah, I no, didn't need to be there, but oh well. Because the only thing we've actually heard from Spock so far is flashbacks to when he was a kid and apparently a bit of an asshole, and an audio recording. So we will see. And yeah, so next week I'll probably be talking about episode 3, and at some point I want to actually give my thoughts on Star Trek Online, because comment section of the last video I got talking about Star Trek Online, with somebody in relation to the destruction of Romulus. So I might do a couple. I'll try and do a couple of these next week. So I'll talk about Star Trek Online, and I'll talk about the next episode of Discovery. And yeah, so overall, I'm liking the direction the series has taken. So far, Season 2 has been vastly superior to Season 1. They actually listened to the criticisms. With that said, I'm very disappointed with the lack of the Enterprise. I would have loved to see what they would have done with the bridge of the Enterprise. Because again, they did a really good job on the uniform, kind of modernizing it without taking away what it was. And I would have loved to see if they could have done the same to the bridge of the Enterprise. So my supposition with that is, if they're going to include it, it's going to be a big moment at the end of the season, probably with either Saru or Michael actually taking command of the Discovery, while Pike goes back to the Enterprise, and the two ships do something awesome together. I can see that being the big finale of the season, effectively. But we will have to see. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on the first 2 episodes. Very positive overall. It's definitely heading in the right direction, and hopefully it'll keep going and keep getting better. Because let's face it, the first season of every Star Trek show sucks. TNG Season 1 is mostly unwatchable. Enterprise Season 1 is garbage. Voyager Season 1's pretty terrible. Season 1 of DS9 is the best, but it's still pretty shonky. And even Season 1 of TOS has some great episodes, but it's got some bad ones as well. Because it's TOS. TOS was always hit and miss. So was TNG, to be fair, but the ratio of good episodes to bad gets a lot better in later seasons. So because Season 1's basically got the Arsenal of Freedom as a good episode, and that's about it. It's also got a lot of clunkers. Anywho, so hopefully Season 2 has improved a lot, and hopefully it'll keep going and keep getting better, and yeah. So thank you all very much for watching this long, rambly, 34+ minute vlog, and I will see you next week.